Hey guys, so I'm going to go over kind of like a lower res version of sculpting in Maya. It's accessible completely in Maya. Uh, and then to get a nice little base for our meshes for our face, because we're going to tackle the old face today. And then what we're going to do is take that sculpt and quad draw over it using in the modeling toolkit this quad draw tool right here. And it's really nice to just be able to lay out the quads like that, rather than worrying about like the topology of your shapes while you're modeling. You can just go straight into the faces themselves and lay them down where they need to be. And in fact, I make the hair the same way. Notice how it's just a bunch of spheres that have been all stretched and warped around, and then I just quad draw over it to fix up that topology. Notice how it's all nice quads on top of there from that point on. And yeah, so we're going to do that same method for the face. I just wanted to show that you can do it with a variety of surfaces. All right, so let me hide all this. In fact, we pretty much don't need anything in the scene. Let's see. Yeah, we need a reference still right there. And I'm just going to hide that as well with Control H. So let's start. So our mission is to lay out the quads for the face right here. And I'm going to go into poly modeling. And I'm going to make a cube. Start with a nice cube. Move that up. And my first step is just going to be a mesh smooth. And you get this kind of spherical shape. Beware if you're trying to make a perfect sphere out of quads, you can't really do it this way. You have to go with a different approach, because it'll make these kind of end points a little bit too exaggerated, like slightly, because like watch if I keep doing it. It's like very spherical, but it's not perfect. Notice how it's kind of a little bit, it's got a little bit of that square in it still. But this is fine for now. So I go in here, and I'm just going to go into shading and enable X-ray, just so I can see through this bad boy. And let's start lining up these verts with points on our model. So I'm just going to take this middle slice and bring it to the midpoint of the head. And I'm just going to start moving these verts as well. Very nice, very nice. I'm going to line this up with the front. I'm going to bring this down to the jaw, to the very tip of the jaw, right there. Oops. And I think, am I able to, yeah, I'm able to click on that. Where are those reference layers? Okay. Sorry, my image planes weren't on reference mode down here, so I was able to click on them, and it's like pretty annoying when you're trying to mess with a bunch of verts when you just keep clicking through the image plane. And then let's go to the other view, the front view, and let's align. In fact, I'm just going to scale uniformly, and then I'm going to enable symmetry on this object X, so I can just straight up drag this to where it needs to be. Very nice, very nice. All right. And you'll note that my reference image is a little bit off, because this side fits well within the bounds of like the head, but then this one not so much. That's kind of a problem that you have to tackle as a 3D artist, is trying to get it to match with references hand drawn and like a little bit imperfect. But it won't be too bad. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mesh smooth that again. And I'm going to see if I can just scale this up and fit it back into that skull shape. That looked like it worked pretty well. And let's move this down. And I'm enabling soft select with B, and then I'm shrinking and growing the size that it pulls around with holding B and middle mouse click dragging. Right there. And I think we're ready for another smooth. Because right now we could start sculpting on it, but we don't have enough density in this mesh to really sculpt in any sort of detail. So that's why we need more subdivisions. But be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to go too far deep into subdivisions, and you'll have like just too dense of a mesh to deal with, and it can be pretty annoying. If you crack open ZBrush, then you'll see the you can run into the same exact problem where you get too dense too fast, and it's a nightmare to work with. So I'm going to mesh smooth this again. I think I'm down to start sculpting on this. So if you open up your sculpting tab right here, you'll see you get a variety of tools in here. We're primarily going to be using this push or this pull, and then this is smooth, but we're going to use that by just holding shift while we're in this mode. And then relax and this move brush. This move brush is pretty, it's basically like, imagine you're soft selecting, but you're just doing it wherever the brush stroke happens. So it's really nice for moving verts around at a bigger scale. But I'm going to open up my, let's see, I'm going to open up my sculpting tool right here, and I'm going to open up my tool settings up here. We're going to do object X and symmetry. So when we make movements, oh, it's behaving strangely. One, I'm going to reset this tool, and so my object just straight up disappeared right there. And the reason that's happening is because our scale is at the we're at the wrong world scale. So if we go in, go to Windows, Settings and Preferences. Now you might not have this problem if you're set up in meters already, but under Settings in linear, we need to set this to meters, and notice how big that becomes. So each of these squares is a meter, right? The meter's a little bit more than 3 feet, just to like kind of encapsulate that, or set up like the relative value of that. Because look at this, look how small and tiny our model is. It's like a matter of inches then. So what we need to do is we need to put everything in here under a group, and then scale that up 100 times to match the real world scale of meters. So let's do that. I'm going to turn off reference because I want to scale up my image planes at the same time, and I want to scale up the rest of grandma as well. So I'm going to select the objects on there, and I'm just going to Control Shift left click over everything to select everything in the scene. I'm going to press Control G or Command G on if you're on a Mac, I believe. And I'm going to, and you'll notice in your outliner, all of those items are now under that group, right? So now we can move that group around. They're now children of this group. This group is the parent of all of these child objects. And so now whatever we do to this group happens to those objects as well. And so we need to set all these scale values to 100, because we were in centimeters, right? But now we're in meters, and a meter is 100 times the size of a centimeter. So by doing this, everything is at the proper scale now, and I can viz off everything that I don't need. There we go. And so now let's try sculpting. with our tools. Right there. And notice how big that brush is. You can hold B and middle mouse click to adjust the size of that. I think you can also do holding B and left mouse clicking as well. Yeah, looks like it. So whatever you're more comfortable with there. And I'm going to go to my front view. And with this in, you might not have X-ray on, so you might not be able to see through. So enable that, and you can start kind of modifying the mesh. But notice, one, I'm pulling way too strong, which is not right. So I'm going to adjust that strength on the brush. It's going to change how much we can pull it. See how much less it's pulling now. So I'm going to do that. Also, since this is the orbital cavity for the eye, you need to kind of push in. In order to push in, what you do is just hold Control, and that'll do the opposite of what your brush is currently doing. So for this one, it's going to start caving in that mesh, and we'll get, well, to be honest, Grandma kind of looks like an alien with the size of her skull, but that's fine. It's just a stylistic choice. And we're just gonna bring those eyes back into the skull, and we're going to also want to. I kind of want to adjust how the front of this face contour is, and I find the best tool for that is the move brush. And be careful, because like you could pull this out to match the drawing, right? But then notice how from the front you kind of just started giving her horns. So you're always going to want to pull from this frontmost piece when you're affecting stuff like that's on the silhouette. Like this is the frontmost part of the silhouette. So I'm going to increase my brush size, and I can pull from this view and kind of fix stuff, or I can pull from this view as well so you can see the mesh a little bit better. And we want to get nice clean shapes, guys, so be careful when you're pulling this. And I'm going to pull out the nose a little bit as well. And I'm going to shrink my brush, kind of push in on that bridge of the nose. I'm going to pull out the chin, because Grandma's got a little bit of a chin. And since it pulled so sharply, I'm probably just going to use this lift tool up here to round out the rest of the chin right there. The key is not to push and pull too hard on this model, because otherwise your verts will get all out of whack if you go way too hard. At this point, I'm going to kind of put in the eyes themselves. So I'm just going to go back to my poly modeling tab right here, and I'm going to create a new sphere. Now I'm going to rotate that sphere, and if you hold J and rotate, it snaps to degrees of 15, I believe. You can make it cleanly snap to 90 degrees right there, or you can just straight up type in 90 degrees to rotate X. And I'm going to scale that down. And now we need to place that eye in. And I'm going to line up this middle pole, like where all these edges connect, to kind of the middle of her pupil, because if she's looking straight forward, then that'll fall right on that pupil right there. And let's push it forward to where the eye is on the other reference. So this is where that eye kind of sits. you'll notice that we kind of pulled back a little bit too much of that eye. Let's double check the right there. You might want to scale it up a little bit too, because grandma does have big eyes, but you don't want to go too huge. All right, so we have one in there. Now, if you want the other one to be represented as well, what you're going to want to do is you're going to need to get rid of all these crazy values over here, right? So in order to do that, because we're going to need to mirror it over, we're going to need to duplicate it and scale it on X, but we can't really do that with these crazy values. You can, but I'd prefer to show you this tool. And this tool is called Freeze Transformations. So notice my channel box over on the right-hand side, and when I use freeze transformations on all the translate, rotate, and scale, all these values become zeros and ones. 0 for all the translation and rotation, 1 for the scale. And then now, if you move the pivot point over to the middle of the world, this middle span right here, and to align that, you hold D to change the pivot point, and then you hold X while you're holding D to snap it to grids, and that'll snap right to the middle. And the cool thing about having a frozen transform on this is that you have all these 0 values. So if you move this anywhere in the world, in order to just bring that back to where it belongs, you just 0 out those values and it'll snap right back there. But we're going to duplicate that with Control D, and then on Scale X, you type in -1. It's going to pop right into position right there. And I think we've brought this sculpt kind of as far as we can at this level of detail. So I'm going to mesh and then smooth, and now we can start sculpting out more. And I'm just going to hold B and left click and adjust my brush for that. And I'm going to start pulling out some nose right here. So let's get all the verts that'll be affected by that nose right there. And I can use my move tool as well from this side, kind of scale that up a little bit and get some of that bridge of the nose in there. And pull that out. Let's see what this looks like from the front. Yeah, see how it kind of crumpled in the front. So I'm just going to use my lift tool and shrink the brush down a little bit to get this to be a bit smoother. Right there. And it's looking pretty good. I might make the cheeks pop out a little bit. So I'm going to very carefully pull on those. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm liking that. And I'm going to bring the this kind of eye, like the eyelids a little bit forward. So I'm going to shrink my brush a little bit and kind of pull on these. And if you pull too much at all, guys, remember that you can always press Shift and just smooth out the verts there. Like if I do it on the nose, notice how it kind of just smooths back into the form. But I like that nose, so I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to pull this forward a little bit, and whenever you're sculpting this stuff, remember that your eyelid isn't very thick, like it doesn't poke out too much. And most of the detailing we're going to fix once we quad draw it up. Like notice the lips are going to be a bit too detailed in order for us to fix from this view, so I'm going to get a nice, once we get nice topology in there with quad draw, we'll be able to fix it up real good. I'm going to make the strength even less there. And it's coming along nice. So also, if you want to include the ears, as most characters have ears, I'm going to make that as a separate object and kind of similarly sculpt it up. So let's do that right now. So with poly modeling, I'm going to start with a cube. I'm going to put this cube in there, scale it down, and I'm going to rotate it as well. So this is just an approximation, right, of that ear. Let's get it lined up. Let's go in one of these side views. I'm going to scale from world now. I just did that by holding holding R and left click at the same time, and it brings up which space you're scaling in. And there we go. All right, and then I'm just going to mesh, smooth it. And I'm going to take that face, and I'm just going to, in soft select, make sure it gets most of that ear in there, so I can just pull it all at once rather than having to go vert by vert. Let's see this view, how messed up is it? Not too bad. Not too bad at all. So I'm going to go back in here. Do I have symmetry on? Yeah, I do. I'm turning symmetry off. Make sure you do that before you put this ear in there. And right away I'm seeing some issues. Like I'm past the bottom of the ear in this image, and then I'm not even touching the bottom of the ear in this one. So usually when I encounter problems like this, I always go look in my perspective viewport and just see what looks best for the model, just visually. And I'll go with that. And so I think we're good for another mesh smooth. So let's do that. And again, you can go back into your faces. Oh my god, apparently not. 1 second. I think I have my image planes not. Yeah, there you go. So make sure your image planes are always on reference whenever you're using them. Otherwise, you'll be able to click them accidentally like I just did. And I'm going to move this ear to kind of align to the top of that. And same with these bad boys right here. So how's that looking? Grandma's got some big ears on here, but you know, it's fine. That'll work for the character. And I'm going to soft select these because I kind of want to pull this back right here. Maybe not as much. And so you can go in here and mesh smooth again. I might just do that one more time. Let's start sculpting on that bad boy. So let's break out our sculpting tools. And I'm going to adjust this. And I'm going to use, instead of pulling out, I'm going to kind of carve in with control. We're going to start kind of defining the inside of that ear. and my verts are getting a little bit wobbly in there, so I'm just going to hold shift and smooth them out while I can, and then I'm going to keep going in here. You got that kind of fold in there, so I'm going to have to pop some of this out and then push some of this back in. And then that goes down to the point right about here. So let's go into this view. So this is probably that divot of the ear where it goes into your ear canal. And that hooks up right there. So let's just get as close to that as we can. I'm going to soften that. And there we go. Just get some ear shape in that. And it's always a good idea to keep smoothing as you go. That way your verts never get too out of whack. Yeah, this will be nice. I'm not going to go too much more detail into this. It's a little bit wacky looking, but if you spend more time sculpting it, you can usually get a better shape. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I just want to show you how to get into quad drawing, which is going to be the next step. I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to mirror this over the same way we did the eyeball. So our steps are to get that pivot point in the middle. So I'm holding D and X to snap to the middle of the world. And then I'm going to modify, freeze transformations to get clean values in our channel blocks over here. There we go. And then I'm Control D. Again, I'm scaling on X, -1, because I'm just scaling. We're scaling from over here to here. So you do that. It's perfectly mirrored. And I'm going to do some a little bit. I'm going to do one more. Smooth on this mesh, and see if I can align the nose correctly. So I'm going to use my move tools and go a little bit bigger. I'm going to start pulling on this. One second. I have to re-enable symmetry on my sculpting tool. That way it's doing both sides. And we'll be able to start pulling this stuff in here. And oops, smooth that a little bit too much. There we go. And I might bevel out the lips just a hair. Just a hair. Let's see. I don't want to do too much at all. Yeah, the mesh was like selected and being sculpted on at the same time, so I don't want to avoid some weirdness with that. Let's get these three a little bit smoother, and then have that go. And keep in mind that I'm sculpting from these different angles, so I can constantly see which parts of the mesh are crumbling and which ones are holding up nicely. And always try to smooth it out. You can use relax too, which tries to not change the shape of the mesh, but still spaces out the verts a little bit better. So if you moved like a bunch of these over to the side, and then tried to relax it back into position, it would try not to change too much of the mesh surface. But yeah, so this should be fine for our purposes here. I'm just gonna make that a little bit smooth, and yeah, because I don't want to overdo it there. There we go. All right. So I'm ready to attach all these together. So I'm going to select all my parts. I'm not selecting the eyes. I'm leaving the eyes separate. And then just do a mesh combine. And now we can start quad drawing. So yeah, fine. I'll split it up into 2 videos. So that'll be in the next video. I'll be uploading that shortly. Look forward to it, guys.